My name is Isabella, and I live in a quiet little town in the countryside of Minas Gerais. I am a woman of faith. I raised my children in church and have always sought to live a righteous life according to the principles I learned as a girl. My journey with God began early, at age 12, and since then I have never strayed from the path. Today, at 33 years old, I can say that I know well the routine of our community, the hymns, the prayers, the sense of peace we feel when leaving Sunday service, but nothing, absolutely nothing in my life, could have prepared me for the experience I had on a cold June night. I will tell you everything in detail, because I feel this is my mission now. That night, I came home exhausted. I worked as an artisan, spending the whole day in my small studio creating ceramic pieces. It was a job I loved, but it demanded a lot of me, both physically and mentally. My husband, a good, hard-working man, had traveled on business, so I was home alone. I felt a terrible migraine, the kind that feels like it's going to split your head in half. I took a strong painkiller, one of those you only use as a last resort, and lay down in bed, hoping sleep would come quickly and take the pain away. But what came wasn't sleep, it was something very, very different. As I breathed deeply, trying to relax, I felt a kind of electric shock run through my body. It wasn't pain, more like an intense vibration, an energy that seemed to separate me from myself. And then it happened. I found myself standing beside my bed, staring at my own body lying there motionless. It was the strangest, most frightening sensation I'd ever experienced. It was as if I were two people at once, the one lying down and the one watching. I heard a voice that was neither male nor female, a voice that seemed to echo within my soul. The voice said, "Isabel, come. Today I will show you the truth behind the veil, the spiritual world that men ignore, and the enemy's tricks to deceive humanity." At that moment, I knew it was Jesus. Don't ask me how, I just knew. A peace I'd never felt before flooded my being, and the fear vanished. He continued, "After what you're about to see tonight, your life and your mission will never be the same." Suddenly, the light in my room vanished, and I was enveloped in total darkness, a darkness so dense it seemed solid. Jesus then said to me in the same calm, powerful voice, "Now, we will descend into the abyss." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet and began to fall at high speed, as if into a bottomless pit. The sensation was terrifying. The wind whistled in my ears, and I felt completely helpless. Then, in the midst of that dizzying fall, Jesus appeared beside me and held my hand. The fall stopped, and we began to descend gently, as if we were floating. We reached a place I can only describe as a valley of shadows and pain. A horrible smell, an odor of death and decay, invaded my nostrils. It was so strong, so unbearable, that I had to cover my face to keep from vomiting. It was 1,000 times worse than anything I had ever smelled on earth. I asked Jesus with a choked voice, "Lord, what is this place? Why does it smell so bad when there is nothing here?" "Jesus," he responded with infinite sadness in his voice, "Isabella, this is the place where all the souls who gave themselves over to sin and did not repent come, all those who rejected my light and chose darkness." At first, I could see nothing but darkness, but gradually my eyes adjusted and I began to see. I saw flames, flames that did not illuminate, only burned, and in the midst of the fire, I saw human forms, bodies distorted by pain, writhing in agony, their flesh melted and reformed in an endless cycle of suffering. Jesus allowed me to see the sins those people committed in life. I saw their stories, their choices. The exact moment they turned their backs on God, I heard their screams, their laments, their desperate pleas for a drop of water to ease their torment. I began to cry, a cry of deep compassion and sadness. I begged Jesus, "Lord, please take these people out of here. They don't deserve this." But Jesus, with tears in his eyes, told me, "I can't, my daughter. They chose this place. They loved darkness rather than light, and now they are reaping what they sowed." I asked, still in shock, "But what exactly is this place?" Jesus answered, "This is the valley of lust, where all those who have given themselves over to the pleasures of the flesh and defiled their bodies, which are the temple of my spirit, Come, I looked again at the valley, and what I saw horrified me. I saw giant serpents with scales that looked like glowing coals, crawling among the tormented souls. I saw one of these serpents enter the mouth of a woman, tearing her jaw and exposing her skull. The same thing happened to the men. I asked Jesus with a trembling voice, "Why are they suffering this way?" And he answered me, "All those who use their lips for perversion, for oral sex, for immorality, now suffer in their own bodies. This place is full of adulterers, fornicators, people who have given themselves over to pornography and prostitution." But the saddest thing, Isabella, is that many of my people, those who frequent my house, are practicing these same things in secret. I want my church to wake up, to watch and pray, because the enemy is working day and night to destroy souls. At that moment, Jesus looked at me with a gaze that seemed to pierce my soul and said, "Your works do not please me." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean, Lord?" I asked, confused, and then, like a movie, my own life flashed before my eyes. I remembered conversations I'd had, impure thoughts I'd nurtured, desires I'd never confessed to anyone. Jesus told me, "No matter how hard you work in my work, no matter how many hymns you sing or how many prayers you say, those who live a double life, who indulge in immorality in secret, will not inherit my kingdom." I saw people who produced adult content on the internet, actors, actresses, and those who consumed such material. In hell, their bodies were mutilated by demons in endless torment. I remembered my youth before I was married. Even while attending church, I dated in secret, disobeyed my parents, and committed sins I thought were buried in the past. There in hell, seeing the suffering of those souls, I began to confess my sins, to truly repent, with tears in my eyes. And then I saw a young woman, a girl of about 16 or 17, being tormented in a particularly cruel way. I asked the Lord, "What did this girl do to deserve this?" Jesus answered me, "She was addicted to masturbation. She sang in the church choir, but secretly indulged in this practice. I tried every way to free her, but she loved her sin. One day, she was walking home from school, distracted, and was hit by a bus. She didn't have time to repent, and now she is here." The sight of that young woman shook me deeply. Such a short life, with such a terrible fate, for something many consider harmless. As I processed this, my eyes were drawn to another, even more disturbing scene. I saw a man who on earth was a well-known philanthropist, a successful businessman who donated millions to charity and had his face plastered across magazines as an example of generosity. In hell, however, his reality was different. He was chained to a solid gold table, and demons with cruel smiles forced him to swallow molten gold coins. The hot metal ran down his throat, burning everything inside, and exited his body in a stream of lava and blood, only to be scooped up by the demons and forced down his throat again, in a cycle of endless agony. I couldn't understand. "Lord," I asked, "didn't this man do so much good on earth? Didn't he help so many in need?" Jesus looked at him with deep sadness and said, "Isabel, man looks at the outward appearance, but I look at the heart. All the good he did was to be seen by men, to boost his own ego and build an image of righteousness. He never did anything out of genuine love. Behind closed doors, he exploited his employees, only withheld taxes, and lived a life of adultery, using his money to silence his lovers. He loved money and his own glory more than me, and now he has exactly what he loved for all eternity." Then he saw a couple, a man and a woman, tied back to back in a grotesque fashion. A demon with a tail that ended in a sharp blade pierced them simultaneously, causing their screams to merge into a sound of pure pain. And they, "Lord, what such terrible sin have they committed to deserve this?" I asked, feeling my stomach churn. "These two," Jesus said, "they were marriage counselors at a large church on earth. They counseled couples, preached about fidelity and holiness in marriage, but secretly they were having an affair. They deceived their families, their spouses, and the entire congregation. One day, while they were together at the parsonage, the woman's suspicious husband returned home early and found them, blinded by hatred and grief. He shot them both before taking his own life. They died in the act of adultery and are now trapped in each other's lives, just as they chose to live in a torment that reflects their betrayal. Each scene was more horrific than the last. I saw people involved in human trafficking, corrupt politicians, and judges who sold sentences, all of them suffering in ways directly related to their sins on earth. It was as if God's justice were poetic in its perfection, giving back to each person the exact measure of the evil they had done. And then Jesus took me to another valley. If the first was the valley of lust, this was the valley of lies and deceit. The air here was different. It didn't reek of rotting flesh, but had a sweet, sickly smell, like dead flowers. The ground was covered in a dense, yellowish mist, and I could hear whispers coming from all directions, voices that promised, praised, and deceived. In the center of this valley was a sort of stage illuminated by a pale, sickly light. On the stage, souls were tormented by demons wearing smiling masks. I saw a man I recognized as a famous religious leader from television. On earth, he preached prosperity theology, promising riches and blessings in exchange for generous offerings. Millions of people followed him, giving away what little they had in the hope of a better life. Here in hell, his tongue was constantly stretched out by a demon with red-hot pliers, while other demons whispered in his ears every day the lies he told, all the lives he ruined with his false promises. He tried to scream, but no sound came out of his mouth. Burned. Anyone who uses my name to deceive my people and enrich themselves will have a terrible fate, said Jesus. He sold my word, turned my house into a marketplace, and now he's paying the price. I also saw gossipers, people who destroyed reputations with their poisonous words. In hell, their mouths were full of worms that ate their tongues and their cheeks from the inside. I saw digital influencers who built their careers on lies, selling a perfect life that didn't exist, causing depression and envy in their followers. They were forced to watch on a fiery screen all the harm their lies caused, feeling the pain of every person they deceived. It was a place of psychological torment, where words were the weapons and lies were the chains. I felt suffocated by that atmosphere of falsehood and remembered all the times I myself wasn't completely honest, the little lies we tell to avoid hurting someone, or to get out of a difficult situation. I realized that for God, there are no little lies. Every lie is an affront to the truth, which is Himself. As I reflected on this, Jesus showed me something that left me paralyzed. It was a mirror, but this mirror didn't reflect my image, but rather my intentions. Every act, every word, every thought of mine was shown there, and the mirror revealed the true motivation behind each one. I saw the times I helped someone in church, not out of love, but to be seen and praised. I saw the times I prayed not to seek God, but to fulfill a ritual. I saw the times I smiled at someone, while inside I judged them. It was the most humiliating thing in my life. I fell to my knees and cried, not out of fear of hell, but out of shame for my own hypocrisy. As I knelt there, something occurred to me. We spend our entire lives building an image for others, hiding our flaws, and our darkest thoughts, and I wonder, if a mirror like that existed on earth, what would it reveal about you? Think about that for a moment. What is the real intention behind your last act of kindness? Before we continue this journey, I want you to stop and reflect on this. Leave a single word in the comments that describes what you think this mirror would reveal about your heart. You don't have to expose yourself, it's an exercise for you. And if this story is moving you as much as it did me, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because what I saw next, in the next valley, will change the way you see the world of entertainment forever. You won't want to miss it. Jesus reached out to me. His presence was the only thing that gave me the strength to carry on. He helped me stand and said with a tenderness that contrasted with the harshness of that place, humiliation before the truth is the first step to purification. Isabella, don't despair, my blood is enough to cleanse you, but your heart must be truly repentant and willing to change. His words comforted me, but the image of that mirror was etched in my mind forever. I understood that the Christian life wasn't about looking good, but about being good from the inside out. We left the valley of lies behind, and the cloying smell of dead flowers gave way to a sound. It was a distant sound, a rhythmic beat, almost like muffled electronic music, mixed with applause and laughter. "Where are we going now, Lord?" I asked apprehensively. "We're going to the great theater of the world," Jesus replied with a serious expression, "the place where minds are shaped and souls are imprisoned without them realizing it." We arrived at a place that looked like a distorted, gigantic version of a movie studio. There were huge screens everywhere, but instead of showing films, they showed scenes of agony. Rusty cameras floated through the air, filming the torment of souls, and stage lights flickered chaotically, illuminating scenes of pure despair. The air vibrated with a strange energy, a mixture of euphoria and anguish. It was seductive and repulsive at the same time. "This place," Jesus explained, "is the spiritual source of much of the entertainment humanity consumes. Here, Satan and his demons create strategies to divert men's attention from me, to corrupt their values, and to numb their consciences." I saw a man who on earth was an acclaimed horror film director. His films were known for their explicit violence and disturbing imagery. In hell, he was trapped in a private movie theater. The screen endlessly played the most horrific scenes he himself had created, but that wasn't all. The creatures, murderers, and monsters in his films emerged from the screen, took shape, and tormented him, making him feel every ounce of pain and fear he inflicted on his characters. He screamed, but his voice was lost amid the terrifying soundtrack of his own work. He opened portals to fear and violence in the minds of millions of people. Jesus said, "He taught a generation to delight in evil and to trivialize death. Now he lives eternally within his own creation." Later, he saw a famous singer, a pop star who dominated the charts with her songs about parties, drugs, and free sexuality. On earth, she was idolized. Her concerts filled stadiums. Here she stood on a dark stage, surrounded by demons who sang their own songs to her, but the lyrics were distorted, revealing the true message of destruction and emptiness behind the infectious beat. Each musical note felt like a needle, piercing her soul, and she was forced to dance, her body moving spasmodically and painfully, as she felt the pain and emptiness of every young man who lost himself by following her example. I also saw a young man, not a creator, but a consumer. He was in his early 20s and had spent his life idolizing a movie actor, one of those action heroes who represent toxic masculinity. He imitated the actor's speech, his clothes, his attitude. He became arrogant, violent, and disrespectful to women, all to resemble his idol. In hell, he was forced to fight the actor himself, or rather, a demonic version of him, which was infinitely stronger. He was beaten, humiliated, and defeated repeatedly, while the demon actor laughed and said, "Did you want to be like me? Then, feel my power." Jesus explained to me with urgency in his voice, "Isabella, my people need to understand that entertainment is not neutral. Every movie, every series, every song, every video game carries a spirit. When you open the doors of your homes and your minds to this content, you are allowing these spirits to enter. They act like a Trojan horse. They enter disguised as entertainment, but once inside, they release the seeds of rebellion, immorality, fear, greed, and violence. They work subtly in the subconscious, changing the way you think, how you feel, and how you act. This is why my church is becoming so similar to the world. They are feeding on the same spiritual food." I was shocked. I had never thought of it that way. I remembered the soap operas I watched, the movies I watched with my husband, the songs I listened to on the radio. Could I also be allowing these Trojan horses to enter my home, my family? Jesus, as if reading my thoughts, led me to one of the huge screens. The screen showed my own living room. I saw myself sitting on the couch with my husband, watching a romantic comedy. It seemed harmless, but then Jesus allowed me to see what was happening in the spiritual world. While we laughed at a joke about adultery, a small demon, with the appearance of a grey and malicious Cupid, entered our home and began whispering in my husband's ears, planting seeds of dissatisfaction and comparison. While the protagonist of the film lied to get what she wanted, another spirit, that of manipulation, tried to influence me. We were completely oblivious, thinking we were just having fun, but a spiritual battle was being waged right there in our living room. "The enemy doesn't need a big door," said Jesus, "just a small crack is enough, and entertainment is one of the biggest cracks my people leave open. Tell my people to guard their eyes and their ears, for they are the windows to the soul. Tell them to examine everything and retain what is good and to turn away from every appearance of evil." The vision of my own home being invaded by those spirits terrified me. I understood that spiritual warfare doesn't just happen in distant places or in extreme situations. It happens every day in our homes, through the choices we make. My body trembled uncontrollably, not from the cold, but from a deep dread that settled in my soul. The image of those little demons entering my living room, taking advantage of our distraction, our innocence, haunted me. How many times had I done that? How many times had I opened the windows of my soul to the enemy without even realizing it? I felt dirty, accomplice. At that moment, I made a vow to God. I promised that if He took me from that place, I would never look at the world's entertainment the same way again. I would become a sentinel, a guardian of my home and my heart. Jesus looked at me with compassion and wiped away a tear I hadn't even known was falling. "This is the spirit, my daughter," He said, "not a spirit of fear, but of vigilance. I don't want my people to live in fear of the world, but to live in the world without being of the world. I want them to have the discernment to separate the precious from the vile." He led me out of that theater of horrors, and the chaotic sound of music and screams faded, being replaced by an oppressive silence. We walked across a gray, endless plain. The ground was covered in fine dust, and the sky, if you can call it that, was leaden, without sun, without stars, without anything. There was no fire here, no screams of agony. There was only nothingness. It was a desolate place, and the absence of everything was, in a way, more terrifying than the explicit torment I had seen before. Scattered across this plain were countless souls. They were not being tortured by demons. They simply wandered aimlessly, with a vacant look in their eyes and an expression of profound boredom and despair on their faces. They looked incredibly tired, as if they had been walking for centuries. "Lord, what is this place?" I whispered. "This," Jesus replied, His voice filled with palpable sadness, "it is the desert of lukewarmness, the home of those who are lukewarm. In my word it is written, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I could if you were either cold or hot, so because you are lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth." I looked at the wandering souls. I saw a man who on earth he was an excellent professional, a renowned engineer who built bridges and buildings. He was a good husband, a good father, never hurt anyone, paid his taxes, was honest in his business dealings, but he never had time for God. He went to church at Christmas and Easter to please his wife. He believed in something greater, but never sought a personal relationship with me. His life was his work, his family, his hobbies. God was just a detail, a convenience. Here in the desert of lukewarmness, he wandered eternally trying to build something with the gray dust, but everything he touched crumbled in his hands. He, who had spent his life building lasting things on earth, was now condemned to an eternity of futility. He saw a woman who considered herself spiritual, but not religious. She mixed a little of each belief, taking what pleased her from Christianity, Buddhism, New Age. She spoke of positive energies and the universe, but rejected the idea of sin and the need for a savior. She was a good person, an NGO volunteer, an animal rights advocate, but she never recognized me as the only way, the only truth, and the only life. Now she wandered the desert trying to meditate, searching for an energy that never came, feeling an emptiness that no philosophy could fill. Jesus explained it to me. Many think that the opposite of love is hate, but the true opposite of love is indifference. These souls didn't hate me, they simply ignored me. They lived their lives as if I didn't exist. They were so busy with the things of the world, with their careers, their pleasures, their own good works, that they didn't feel the need for me. They weren't against me, but they weren't for me either, and whoever isn't for me is against me. They chose to live without me on earth, and I merely honored their choice in eternity. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. Hell wasn't just for murderers, thieves, and perverts, it was also for the good, the indifferent, For those who thought their morality was enough to save them, I looked more closely at one of the souls and recognized a neighbor of mine, an elderly, very kind lady who always greeted me with a smile. I'd invited her to church several times, but she always said politely, "Oh, my dear, I pray my own way at home, God knows my heart." And now she was there, in that grey desert, with the same polite smile frozen on a face of despair. I felt guilty. Should I have insisted more? Was my faith so weak that it didn't convince her? Jesus, sensing my anguish, placed his hand on my shoulder. Salvation is individual, Isabella. You planted the seed, the choice of gifts was hers. But this serves as a lesson for my people. It's not enough to be religious, it's not enough to go to church every Sunday and fulfill the rituals. I don't want your religion, I want your heart. I want a relationship. I want to be the priority in your life, not just a part of it. Lukewarm faith, faith of convenience, faith that doesn't transform, is a useless faith, and its destiny is this desert of eternal emptiness. Those words echoed in my mind. I thought of all the times I went to church out of obligation, that I read the Bible in a compressed form, that my prayers were just a list of requests. I realized that even within the church, it's possible to be lukewarm. It's possible to have the appearance of a Christian but have a distant heart, living in your own private desert. That place taught me that neutrality is an illusion. In the spiritual realm, there is no middle ground. You're either burning with love for God or you're growing cold in indifference, and indifference, I discovered, is a slow and silent path to the same fate as hatred. The lesson of the desert of lukewarmness was hard, but necessary. It left me with a burning desire to never be lukewarm again, to live each day with passion and purpose for God.